This training is to go over the pre-qualified suppliers functionality of the open contracting portal. There are three main steps to add pre-qualified suppliers. The first two must be completed by the system administrator. For these, you'll access them from the metadata option after the administrator is logged in. The three can be found at the bottom. The first step is the pre-qualification schemas. On this page, you can see all of the schemas that have previously been entered. We've entered a number of test schemas for this purpose. Here you can edit any of the previous schemas to be able to see what is there, or you can add a new schema. You can filter the available schemas by year range, prefix, name, and status. You can also add a brand new schema. For adding a new schema, you can either create a new empty schema from scratch, or you can base your schema on a schema that already exists in the system. This can be useful as if a schema is already very similar to your new schema and you only need to edit a few small changes. However, for the sake of this training, we're going to create a new empty schema. For your schema, you must first name your schema. When thinking of a name for your schema, it should be unique and it should be identifiable. For this training, I'm going to name it Schema Approved in year 2022. Next, add the schema prefix. This is the prefix that's going to come before your item code IDs. So it could be EMC, for example, for Elgeyo Marakwet. Then you want to add your new items. Enter a unique item code that should be standardized, and then the name of what you want to be pre-qualified for. Specify if the suppliers should be any AGPO categories. Then continue to add items that you want added to the schema. For the sake of this, we will go ahead and save it as is. If you hit close, it will not save any of your edits or changes. If you save as draft, this will allow you to save what you've done so far if you haven't finished adding all the information to your schemas. If you are finished and complete, hit save and submit. You'll now see your new schema at the bottom of the list. You'll notice the year range is empty for our new schema. That's because we haven't specified this for a year range yet. That's our next step. So from your metadata, go to the pre-qualification year ranges. Here you can see the year ranges that have been specified and the schemas applied to that year range. Let's add a new year range. Name a year range as it can span as many years as needed. So let's specify 2022 through 2025. Now you specify what schemas you want to use for this year range. Let's do the schema we just created. Specify what years you want this to be used for. And hit save. Once you've linked your schema to a year range, you can go to the pre-qualified suppliers. From here, you can select what year range and schema you want to look at. Our new schema won't have any suppliers applied to it. After you select click submit, you'll notice that this is now empty. So let's look at a sample one where some data has been entered. Hit submit. You'll see here the list of all of the items and the suppliers that have been pre-qualified for those items. Now, these are sample names, so it's a little bit confusing when looking at this sample information. But you can see here, for example, this one is printer and also paper. Here you can filter to identify if you want to look at the list of all of this pre-qualified suppliers for a specific item, it will show those. You can also exit and say you want to look at all of the items a specific supplier is pre-qualified. So you can see here our sample supplier SP12 has been pre-qualified for both procuring printing and paper. It'll also specify if they have been pre-qualified for, if they are a supplier for AGPO categories, if they are based in any sub-counties or wards, as well as the director email, phone number, and mailing address for that supplier. You can also filter by specific AGPO category, sub-county, or ward if you want to see any specific information for suppliers for that. Oops. From here, you can delete a supplier, which will remove them as being pre-qualified for this specific item, or you can edit. When editing, it takes you to the page for that pre-qualified supplier. Here, you can edit their default contact information. You can also edit the information for what they are currently pre-qualified for, and you can also add them to be pre-qualified for an additional item. So you can say that they are also now pre-qualified for paper. From here, you can select if you want them to use their default contact information, or if you want them to use different contact information for a specific item, you can either select any other contact information that has been created for them, or you can add new contact information. We're going to remove this entry. You can save, delete again, which will remove them from being pre-qualified for all of these, or you can close. You can also add a new supplier to be pre-qualified by clicking new. From here, it'll specify the year range you're adding them to, and you can search for a supplier that's already been entered into the supplier metadata, or if you search for a supplier and they aren't in the system yet, you can click Create New Supplier. All suppliers must first be added as typical suppliers before they can be added as pre-qualified suppliers. So let's add their name, a supplier code, specify if they fit any AGPO categories, if you have their registration ID, and you can add contact information for them as well, and specify if they are based in any sub-counties or wards. Once you've added all of your information, you can hit save. Now, you'll notice that this opened in a new tab. If you go to your previous tab and now try to search for that supplier you created, their information will now pop up. And you can see the contact information that we had previously added and select that as your default. Now we can add them to be pre-qualified for this new information. And again, you can use the default contact information, or you can specify different contact information for this specific item. We're going to go ahead and use the default. Once you're done, you'll hit save, and they will now be added, Elgeyo supplier, to the pre-qualification list for this item. You can also export this list into an Excel, which is responsive to your filters. So for example, if you want to get a list of pre-qualified suppliers for women that have been pre-qualified, you can export that into an Excel. That concludes our training. Thank you.